Welcome to the Fantasy Baseball Beat, part of the Pitcher List Podcast Network. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Torres. I'll be your host today. We've got a great show for you this evening. At least I think so, and I hope you agree. We're going to be talking all things Mets with Laura Albanese of Newsday. What the heck is happening with Pete Alonso? That's the big question that everybody wants to know. So we'll be going over that. We'll be talking about the rotation, what this lineup is going to look like. And then Dave and I are going to be doing some fantasy analysis. I'm going to tell you why Mark Vientos is a do not draft at his current cost. We'll be talking injuries with Dave, my co-host, and going over some of his recent articles, which have given, I know it's given me a lot of insight into players that we got to look out for in terms of their injury track record. And as always, we'll be ending with our mental health minute. But first, let me bring in Laura Albanese of Newsday. This is her second time on the show. Really happy to have her back. We'll be talking all things Mets. So, Laura, thank you so much for joining us. How are you today?
I'm doing well. Thank you. Thank you so much for having me, guys.
Yeah, it was great last time. We had a lot of fun. So definitely wanted to have you back. I'm going to kick it to Dave with the big question that everybody's thinking about right now. So Dave, take it away.
We're all dying to know right now what is going to happen with Pete Alonso. Is he going to stay, or if he leaves, how do you see the Mets filling that void?
So it's an interesting question because I feel like I went to both Amazing Day on Saturday, and that was the same day of the BBWAA dinner, which is an event that Scott Boras attended. And during the Amazing Day event, there was a panel with Steve Cohen and David Stearns where obviously the fans start chanting, "We want Pete, we want Pete, we want Pete." And David Stearns starts saying that he wants to fill that role internally, and he gets booed heartily. Steve Cohen says, well, you want to know what? I don't like the way that Pete's agent, Scott Boras, is structuring the contract that Pete wants. But I'm going to leave that door open. However, the way that he says it makes it very clear that he has a hard line in the sand. Mm-hmm. And everyone starts cheering.
I didn't understand that part. They were like, even though it was Pete, and then he's like, "Nah, we're tired of Pete," and they're like, "Yeah." Like, what?
Right. It was the exact same thing that Stern said, but like in a little bit of a different flavor. And suddenly people are like, "Oh, okay." So we go to the BBWA dinner, and I forget what award it was, but out of nowhere, like in the back, in the bowels, and this is a place where you hand out the Cy Young. This is where you hand out the MVP. People start going, "We want Pete. We want Pete," with Boras in tow. And I think this kind of like shows where the negotiations are. I do think the Mets and Pete Alonso want a reconciliation, but I think they're both playing hardball. And I think Steve Cohen, shocker of all shocker, a guy who is a billionaire, who has made a million great business decisions, who knows how to game a system, probably had a trump card there. I think he had a method to his madness when he said that during Amazing Day. I think he was, if he had no interest in getting Alonso back at all, why do you even bother saying that? Why do you even bother saying, well, I don't like the structure of the negotiations, but not exactly like the money of the negotiations? So this makes me feel like perhaps a Pete Alonso returning to the Mets is way more possible than it was. I mean, all the reports say that the Blue Jays fumbled it on the 10-yard line, which means they were close, but maybe they didn't like the deferrals. Mm-hmm. The Pete Alonso factor in New York City means so much more than in any other city. And I think it's worth it. I think the Mets lineup is better with him in it. Yeah. I think at this stage in the game, it's going to be harder to replace him. And I think everybody kind of knows this. So now it's a question of, okay, how do we structure this in a way that doesn't make it seem like, Pete is essentially coming back with his tail between his legs, which is not fair to him because he's done everything other than, these recent contract negotiations. He's done everything the Mets could have asked him to do as a homegrown talent.
Right. I almost feel like they owe it. Like they owe it to him, like he has been he's been Mr. Met, like he's been a great ambassador for the team. He's, just always been a team first guy. It just seems like he's meant to be with them, and it's almost like I understand David Stearns probably is not looking at Pete Alonso's profile and like, oh, that's exactly the profile that, that I
Right.
want. But I think there is something to this guy has been, been so good for you for, as a player and just as an ambassador for the organization. Like you almost just owe him a little bit, and you have a huge hole there, right? If Alonso doesn't come back, who are you bringing in? There's no one really on the market that's left. If you had made
Bregman,
a move earlier in the offseason,
like
okay, I could see you, maybe
that's it.
thinking you have a better option, but there's nobody out there now.
Yeah.
And I mean, what do they have? Jared Young, like, are they going to move Vientos? But then who plays third? It seems like he is the fit on both ends. It just makes too much sense.
Yeah, I agree. It's very much an Occam's razor thing, which is like sometimes the most obvious solution is the best one.
Right.
I do feel, you have invested so much money in Juan Soto,
Mm-hmm.
and Pete Alonso hitting around Juan Soto, hitting behind it makes the team better. I understand he's not going to hit for average, but he's still such a power threat. I mean, how do you say no to 35 home runs? How do you say no to 36 home runs? Even though he's an age 30 first baseman and everyone thinks at the minute you turn 30 as a first baseman, you become like this pumpkin. He can still hit them out. And like especially at like a 3-year deal, which is what they're talking about now, when we were talking about 5-7 years,
Right.
before this. I mean, I would, obviously I'm not David Stearns, so I don't know the inner workings of this. I understand the way that players drop off, but this seems like a layup a little bit to me.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you think I've heard some or seen some speculation on social media, like Alonso is not happy with Scott Boras? I mean, have you heard any rumblings about that? Like there could be a change there, like he really wants to come back and Boras maybe telling him to hold out for a better deal. Any insight into that?
I haven't necessarily heard that. It seems like, other agents have been told not to approach Pete Alonso for a change. And the thing is, like, Scott Boras can say what he wants. Pete Alonso is still the person who makes the decision.
Right.
Scott Boras can be like, this is in your best interest, this is in your best interest, this is in your best interest. Maybe you might have to pay a premium, whatever else. This is Pete Alonso's life. He gets to make the ultimate choice. So
Right.
if he personally decides, with him, his family, whoever else, that Scott Boras is not looking out for his best interests, he can be like, you want to know what, man? I kind of want to go back to where I want to go. Is it going to be a little bit more difficult? Sure. Are there going to be some sour grapes? Probably. This has not been an easy negotiation. Steve Cohen said that it was harder than the Juan Soto negotiation. And he also said that he didn't know that he was going to land Juan Soto until half an hour before he got Juan Soto. So, I mean, this is kind of how thorny this is, probably because of the emotional aspect of it. Everybody talks about baseball as a business, but I say it over and over again. Businesses are built on people. And, people matter. Their personalities matter. What they contribute to a certain clubhouse, what they contribute to a fandom matter.
Yep.
And if you burn that, and if you burn that personal relationship, sometimes things get complicated.
Yeah. And I think that's so important too, just the idea of like the clubhouse presence matters. Pete Alonso has been in that clubhouse for years, and to not only would you be losing his production, but you lose his presence, in the clubhouse. And I think that matters. We saw that with the Mets last year, that having the right mix of players like that, like I know from an analytics perspective, a lot of people would probably be like, like you can't quantify that, right? But there is something to that. And yeah, I think it's a no-brainer. So I hope both sides can find a way to meet in the middle and get this done. But I want to ask you, Laura, about this lineup. And for now, let's just assume, Alonso is not there. I think we both think he's going to be there, but let's just say he's not. What would be your prediction for what this lineup would look like on opening day?
I was going through it and I actually wrote it down because I was kind of mixing and matching things because I was doing some of this for SNY as well. And while the lineup is good, it definitely lacks pop. I mean, so you start off with Lindor because he's done well, hitting first, and then you go to Soto, hitting second, much like he did with the Yankees. And then you have to essentially believe that Vientos is exactly what you saw, which I do, but it's still a risk for a kid that young, especially if, hey, you decide to move him to the opposite side of the
Yeah.
infield and expect his defense to not affect his offense, which can be difficult for younger players.
Hmm.
So after that, you have Nimmo, who gets on base, but maybe doesn't have exactly the amount of pop you want in a cleanup hitter. You have to hope Alvarez has a bounce back year. Only 11 home runs last year. And then it gets a little bit murky. So you can do Winker or Marte. Then you have like Jose Siri or Tyrone Taylor. And then it's a choice between, all right, who do you bat ninth? McNeil, I do think he's going back to those bat to ball skills. So at least he'll be able to get on base. So maybe that could be like a number 9 hitter with a sort of pseudo 9-1 hitter that kind of goes back to back, just someone who's able to get on base. So that would put Beatty at 8. But there are so many variables in this lineup because there are so many unproven and or guys that have struggled last year, maybe have not hit to their potential. There's one gaping hole. You need something else in there.
Yeah. They're missing at least one piece there. There does seem to be a lot up in the air. I wanted to follow up on Alvarez. I know you had tweeted the other day. You spoke with him at Amazing Fest, I believe is what it's called.
Amazing Day, yeah.
Or Amazing Day. And he had made a comment that he's looking to improve his plate discipline, or I think it was some variation of that. Did he expand on that at all? Or I know he had made a comment though about improving.
He had made a comment on it. I honestly thought you were going to go the other direction, which is the part where he said that he learned English from Peaky Blinders.
Well, that was next.
Certainly a
Yeah,
choice,
I saw that too.
which is hysterical because I am just begging for him to like just bust out the Peaky Blinders accent next time we have an interview.
Right.
But yeah, no, he's looking to work on his plate discipline, which is easier said than done. Young players have always had trouble with the breaking ball, and we saw that with him. So he had a high chase rate, he had a high whiff rate. I think that kind of led to the power numbers going down because pitchers have learned how to pitch to him. However, young players can also learn as much as opposing pitchers can learn how to hit breaking balls. This is one of those guys where I feel like, when I was in the Yankees clubhouse last year, there were a lot of players, younger players, who indicated how much they had benefited from learning from Juan Soto. Because Juan Soto, everyone's like, oh, he's the new Ted Williams. He is the guy who has the plate discipline. He's the guy who's going to get on, he's going to walk more than he strikes out while still having the power. And it's because he is such a student of the game. So I think it would be interesting to see the Juan Soto effect on someone like Francisco Alvarez that has so much trouble controlling the strike zone. That
would be that is a nice pairing right there. If he can control the zone better, I mean, he's got the natural power. I know fantasy managers are hoping that he kind of taps into that power that he showed his rookie year. Right now, going around pick 162. Dave, yes or no? Are you in or out on Francisco Alvarez at his price?
At 162, yeah, I'm in. I'm in especially in a 2-catcher league. I would take a chance on him. I think he's got some power potential going on there. He's had a lot of minor ailments here and there, like some bumps and bruises, but I think he can hold up, and I think he's got a good season in him.
All right, Dave is in. All right, we are going to take a quick commercial break, and we will be back talking more Mets.
We are back here on the Fantasy Baseball Beat, part of the Pitcher List Podcast Network. We're here with Laura Albanese, sports writer at Newsday. Thanks again for coming on. My question to you is, how do you think the rotation plays itself out? Are Blackburn and McGill on the outside looking in at this point? And as a dark horse, you think they might try Grimace in the rotation, or is he more of a swing man?
Personally, looking at Grimace's ERA plus last year, I would never count him out. And especially his FIP, I thought was above average. But no, I think we're looking at a 6-man rotation once again, just because they are still Kodai Senga is coming back from injury, and they were so careful with Kodai Senga the first couple years because he was coming in from essentially a place where definitely a place where he only pitched once a week. Coming back from injury, they're going to want to replicate that. I think David Stearns has said so as much. So it's probably going to be Blackburn or McGill as that number 6, which is tricky because you're still trying to convert Clay Holmes into a starter, and you're not quite sure how that's going to go. Frankie Montas is also kind of like roll of the dice. You know, he had a decentish year, struggled in New York, had injuries. So a lot of the rotation is actually very, very much in flux. So I don't know if Blackburn and McGill are so much on the outside looking in, as much as they are going to be probably very necessary pieces of this rotation if they're going to go for the 6-man rotation. That being said, there has been, you know, in the Mets fandom, there's this idea of like in Stearns we trust, which I get it to a certain extent.
Mhm.
And I will give it to him in this particular sphere. I think what he's been able to do with the pitching staff, or rather finding kind of these diamonds in the rough with their pitching, has been really interesting. I like how they acquired Desi Druschel, which was the assistant pitching coach over at the Yankees. And when we did the Clay Holmes press conference, he indicated how much Desi had helped him in terms of just being innovative about pitching. Like when you talk to Clay Holmes about pitching, he's one of those cerebral pitchers. He goes to drive line. He's always trying to tweak things. When he was at the Pirates, he struggled a lot. And then he brings in this sweeper, which like in baseball perspective called the best pitch in 2024. Like that's his sweeper. And then he has this gyro slider, and then he has the sinker, and then he introduced the 4-seam fastball in the postseason. And now he's working on a changeup. So I feel like there is potential there for something really, really good. However, every time you talk about potential, there's always the downside. There is always like, what if this doesn't work? Because pitching mechanics they're like black magic to me. Like, you know, sometimes it works out great. Sometimes, you know, you have a little twitch in your shoulder, and that's it for like the month of May. Like you're done. Like it's not working for you anymore. And then you get the yips and everything else goes haywire. So the Mets rotation is a gigantic question mark. You have to hope that Sean Manaea is the Sean Manaea not only of last year, but even slightly a little bit better if you're going to count him in as your ace. Because right now you can't really count on Kodai Senga necessarily. And then after that, you have David Peterson, who I'm very high on. Who else do you have? Montas, as we talked. We have Clay Holmes, and then you have Blackburn. Yeah, everyone is in play. They might put me in. They might actually put Grimace in at one point. Who knows?
I'm telling you, man, the way he threw that one pitch, I mean, the stuff plus was off the charts, you know,
Insane.
and he's definitely got the frame for it, you know, like he could hold up. He's got a starter's build, I feel like.
No, you know how they say like you have like a starter's thighs?
Right. He's got those. Yeah. Yeah. I can't get enough of the whole Grimace thing. I hope that continues strong into this year. I think it will. The fans
he showed up to the BBWA because the Mets won Toast of the Town, which was like the award given to like the team that like took the hearts and minds, or not even the team, like, or the thing that took the hearts and minds of the baseball world. And out of nowhere, I wasn't expecting it. There comes Grimace coming back from the dead.
That's amazing. I saw the picture. That's just, yeah, I would have freaked out. I would have been like a fanboy, you know, if I was there and saw Grimace just show up.
It's Livy Dunn and Grimace? Are you kidding me?
Oh, please. That combo, I wouldn't even know what to do. Anyway, but yeah, getting back to the rotation for real. They've got some interesting names. I mean, do you think there's any chance they add to this rotation? I know there's some names on the block, like with the Padres. There's some names being floated out there as, you know, being available, and then there's some free agents still available. So, do you think there's any chance the Mets bring in anybody else at this point, or you think this is it?
It's kind of, they definitely don't want to go over that $310 million. Well, not definitely, because they will go over that $310 million luxury tax threshold, I believe, but I don't think they want to go too over it. So if you go into the free agent market at this point, and if you do get back Pete, because you do need one more piece at least in that lineup, even if you don't get Pete, you need somebody else. I don't think they're going to do it through free agency. I think it could be via trade. Okay. I mean, Michael King coming back would be.
That's the move. That is the move. or
That is the move.
Cease.
I was impressed with Michael King for years, and I did the same thing with. I hate to be the person who was like, I liked them before they were cool. But Michael King and Seth Lugo, I was like,
Yep.
these guys, and like Michael King, come back to New York.
I think he would be the guy. I think he's not recognized as an ace, but I think he's got ace stuff, and I think he's gonna kind of grow into that this coming year. And so I think
so.
if the Mets could add him, that would be such a boost, because there's no ace on this team. We don't know, does Manaea carry over the gains he made in the second half? I know he changed his arm slot, but
even if Manaea carries over, he's still going to be an above average 3+ ERA pitcher.
Right.
He's not going to be the shutdown.
You're not looking at a sub-3 ERA most likely with a guy.
No, you're
like
not getting
Manaea.
a Jacob deGrom out of Manaea,
No.
and that's not fair to ask that of him either.
He's never been that. He's never shown that potential. So yeah, I do think Holmes is interesting. That was a really, I thought, sneaky move by them to get Holmes, and I think, man, as a Yankee fan, I was kind of disappointed. Like I never even considered that as a possibility, but he's got the stuff. I think he could be pretty solid in the rotation. So that'll be interesting to see here. Let's transition to the bullpen here. And I want to know if anything, God forbid, we already went through this once. If anything happened to Edwin Diaz, though, they've added some names, right? They've got AJ Minter and they bring Stanek back the other day. Do you think there's a clear-cut handcuff to Edwin Diaz, or do you think if he wasn't there that it would be kind of a mix of a committee approach to the ninth inning?
You know what? It was interesting when Edwin Diaz first got hurt. I was talking to a source within the team, and this was actually at the end of the season. At the end of the season, he was like, the minute he got hurt, we knew we were in big trouble, and they were.
Yeah.
I do not think the Mets are in the same position, and I think AJ Minter is probably the answer to that. I understand he didn't have a great year. I understand last year. I understand that his velocity was down and that his home runs went all the way up, but he was also dealing with an ailing hip, which for a pitcher, for a reliever, that is such a big issue. I mean, look at David Peterson. One of the reasons David Peterson was able to do what he did, which was, what did he have? A 2.90 ERA after he came back from May 4th. He had a 1.36 ERA plus. He was in pain. This really, really affects the pitcher. I think AJ Minter, with a fixed hip now, could be the AJ Minter that we saw. This is a guy who strikes out 1/3 of the batters that he sees. That is a weapon. When the Mets got him, all of Jeff Passan's replies were Braves fans going, "What? No, please God, no, please God."
I feel like right out of all teams,
yeah, they're like, "Please God." I feel like that's the answer. And worse comes to absolute worse, which I kind of love the sort of 3D chess move, is that if that doesn't work, you do have Clay Holmes on the back burner. And while Clay Holmes struggled last year, he has still found he has the ability to close out games if necessary. When they signed Clay Holmes, I'm like, all right, if he doesn't work as a starter, he's a great insurance policy. So, I mean, there is no loss here.
Right. Yeah, I didn't even think of that. I just assume, I'm thinking, all right, Clay Holmes is in the rotation, but yeah, he's been a closer, so I think he could step into that role pretty seamlessly. So I guess, Dave, the point is that there is no clear-cut handcuff, because it could be Minter, could be Holmes. So let's pray nothing happens to Edwin Diaz. I'm so tired of the bullpen chaos that we've had to endure over these past couple of weeks.
Oh, that's crazy.
We assume someone's a closer somewhere, and then someone else signs, and it's just been madness. Can we have some consistency and some normalcy? Let's just have Edwin Diaz get through the year as a closer. We'll take him in the third round. Just let it be.
When have bullpens ever been normal? I mean,
never. It's silly to
justice for the weirdos.
Yeah. But just some something work out the way we think.
I'm just picturing Clay Holmes closing out the World Series against the Yankees.
Oh my God.
There's
Wait, with whatever song he has, it's like the most non-closer song. It's like
It
sort of
stinks.
like
I could tell you from experience. It's just when he comes in the ballpark, like you want to get pumped up. It's like, here's our closer. And then his song comes on, you're like, ugh. It's just like it's not inspiring at all.
One of the funniest parts of last year was Aaron Judge telling us, like, no, we really pushed for Clay because it was the beginning of the year to have like his entrance like Edwin Diaz does with like the big screen and the lights down, like everything. And the song comes on, and I'm just like, it's a little bit country for this, but go with God, guys.
Right. It's a little underwhelming, but yeah, maybe just keep Narcos, no matter what. Even if Diaz isn't there,
Clay Holmes
we'll have
cannot
Clay
come out
Holmes
to
adapt to it. All right, Dave, kick it. You got a question on under the radar players.
Yeah. We're just wondering if you have any insight on maybe an under the radar player, either in the majors and the minors, and anyone you think that might surprise us or make a significant impact this year. And second one would be, what's the deal with Jared Young?
So I don't know if he's an under the radar player, but the player that intrigued me the most last year was David Peterson. You take this guy who has kind of been like either really good, really bad, going from the minors, going to the majors, everything else, and then you realize that he's been suffering from a hip injury for essentially 2 seasons.
Yeah.
And the thing that interested me about Peterson, in addition to his success, was how versatile he was, and the literal ice in his veins in the postseason, where he could come out of the bullpen and just shut things down in really difficult situations. This speaks to a level of maturity and kind of a concept on how to get outs when maybe you don't have your best stuff. I think he had one bad outing against Toronto or something like that. I think that David Peterson could be the type of pitcher that ascends from like a sort of like bottom rotation to an extremely key piece, that not only extremely key piece, but an extremely key piece that you can deploy in various situations. This guy has been fighting for his career his entire baseball life. He has the build for it. Every scout's been like, "Oh man, if only he could put it together. If only he could put." I think at the end of last year, we saw someone who was going to put it together. So I would keep your eye out on him. And then Denzel Nunez as well. I've always liked Denzel Nunez.
Okay. Yep. A lot of people I know have talked about him as, a handcuff to Diaz, like we were talking about before. But it seems like there's probably some other guys that are ahead of him in the pecking order. But yeah, definitely an electric arm in Nunez. Getting back to Peterson, I mean, he is a little bit under the radar in fantasy. I mean, right now he's going around pick 350, 400. So in like your standard 12-team league, he's not going to be drafted, but definitely a guy to keep an eye on. I know last year the ERA looked good. The strikeouts weren't there the same way they had been prior to his injury, but I think he learned how to become a better pitcher last year, and I think if he can marry the better approach with and bring back the strikeout stuff, which could come back because, I mean, let's remember he was just coming off of hip surgery.
Right.
Then I think you've got a really, really effective pitcher. And my dad says, he's always said it. He watches the Mets. My dad's the biggest Mets fan you ever know. He watches every game. And he's always like Peterson. And he always says left-handers take a while to figure things out. And I think we could see, everything coming together for Peterson this season. All right, Laura, I want to get you out of here in a minute, but I'm just going to quickly go through a few over-unders.
Okay.
Just if you could answer with whether you think they're going to go over or under, but also if you could give me your percentage confidence on a 0 to 100 scale.
I'm confident about nothing, but okay.
Okay, well, as confident as you can be to these 5 questions here. So I'm going to start with Tyler McGill, over-under 20 starts.
I am going to go a little bit on the under. I feel like Blackburn will probably take a few more of the starts. I feel like McGill has been kind of mercurial, has been sent down to the minors. I would say that with only like a 60% sort of like feeling about it. He did have a better ERA than Blackburn, but again, it's one of those things where it's like you want him to put it together, but when he starts going down, and suddenly he has to kind of like figure it out again. So under.
Okay. How about Jose Siri, over under 400 plate appearances?
I'm going to go under because he's probably going to be splitting time with Tyrone Taylor. Both are very good defensive options. Tyrone Taylor has a little bit more pop, but not much. So I'm going to go under with like 70% certainty.
Okay. Take note, because I know a lot of people out there are depending on Jose Siri. They kind of see him as like the everyday center fielder. At least that's kind of
I like
the vibe
Tyrone
I'm getting.
Taylor. He makes
What's
some
that?
great play. I like Tyrone Taylor. Do not sleep on
He's
Tyrone
a very
Taylor.
good player. Yep. 300 plate appearances for Starling Marte, over or under?
I'm going to say over because even when he was injured, he had more than 300 plate appearances. Like when he's healthy, he's healthy. And even though his speed has gone way down, he's still pretty good defensively. He still has pop in his bat. I'm going to go over. And I would say that with like a 70%, 85. We'll go 75% certainty.
Okay. Over under 7 stolen bases for Brandon Nimmo.
Oh, over easily.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, he had 15 stolen bases last year. It's like he is a conservative base stealer because while he has the sprint speed, he does not necessarily have the base stealing instincts, which are two different things. But that comes with practice, and he likes the new base stealing rules. I would do an over with like 99% chance.
And you're confident in the foot, like the plantar?
I am confident in the plantar fasciitis. Yeah. I feel like he played through it. I mean, there were times obviously he was grimacing. It's going to be difficult, but he's had time to rest. Yeah, I'm confident he'll be okay.
Oh, good to know.
All right. I see what you did there. He was grimacing. 350 plate appearances for Brett Beatty.
With only like a 30% chance, I would go under because there is a man by the name of Ronnie Mauricio who might be surprising some people. And by surprising some people, I mean people just forgot about him, but he's very good.
Have they given any updates? Because I know last time I heard he was kind of behind schedule, wasn't really doing baseball activities. Anything since then? Have they?
I believe Carlos Mendoza said that he's doing baseball activities during Amazing Day and that he's working towards it. And he will be fighting for a spot in spring training.
Okay. That dude can play. I mean, when he came up a couple years ago, I mean, he was crushing the ball. So
if you're fighting for a spot, it means he must be healthy enough.
Yep. All right. Let's see. I want to get you out of here, but I got to ask you one of these questions. So I'm going to go with this one. Give us your bold prediction, because the Mets, we know they had so much with like the fun, like we had the Grimace thing, we had the OMG thing last year. Give us your bold prediction, and obviously this is going to be totally made up, but give us your bold prediction on which ridiculously fun trend emerges for the Mets this season. Okay.
So my money would be on really stupid walk-up songs and or sing-along walk-up songs. Okay. Because not that I think these are stupid, but we started with My Girl with Francisco Lindor, and he was really into it. And then in the playoffs, Pete Alonso was like, hey, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to change it to American Pie because I want people to sing along too. So if Alonso comes back and we got My Girl and American Pie and people are singing along, suddenly we're going to get Mr. Brightside. We're going to get some weird just sing-along songs. And the whole thing is just going to become High School Musical. So there you go.
That would be so, I think that you're onto something. That would make a lot of sense because like the My Girl thing with Lindor, it's just really cool. Like when the whole stadium is singing the song. I remember, what was it? Bryson Stott, right? For the Phillies had that a couple years. I don't remember the song he had, but like he came up in the playoffs and the whole stadium is singing it. And then he hit that big home run. Like that is just such a cool thing. That makes a lot of sense. Like if that became like a thing, like every player adopted their own walk-up song, like that would just be really fun as a fan to be at a game.
I'd love it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, listen, it's entertainment. I wish, I'm a Yankee fan, but like I wish the Yankees would embrace some of these things like the Mets do, because it's so fun. I got into the Mets last year, like during their playoff run, because it's like this is like a really just cool story. And like they're just a fun group of guys. So hopefully the Yankees, loosen the collar a little bit. Come on, let the people just the
I
whole
hope both of them listen to me, and we have sing-along walk-up songs for both teams.
Oh, that'd be awesome. That'd be
Living
so
in
cool.
harmony.
Yep. Yep. All right, Laura. Well, we appreciate you so much. Thank you for taking the time to join us again. If you can please just let our listeners know, excuse me, where they could find your work and where they could find you on social media.
All right, so my name is Laura Albanese. I'm a special writer for sports, concentrating on baseball for Newsday at newsday.com. You can find me on Twitter at Albanese Laura, Instagram at Laura Writes Stuff, and I have a podcast called First Time Listener, Long Time Caller.
And that is a good podcast. Definitely check that out. Also, I know you've been on Baseball Night New York on SNY.
That's right. I was just there. That's why we had to move this later today, because I had to be on SNY.
Okay. Well, obviously, this was bigger deal, I'm sure.
It was, but it was just like they penciled me in. I had to go.
All right. We'll accept it. So, all right, Laura. Thank you again, and we'll talk soon. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me, guys. Appreciate it.
Appreciate you.
We are going to take a quick commercial break, and we will be back with more fantasy baseball talk. All right, buddy. You got the time?
Yeah, 36. Yeah.
All right, cool. All right, so I'm looking at 10:05. We'll wrap. Okay.
Yeah, I'm good.
Okay. All right, we are back. We just heard an interview with Laura Albanese of Newsday. Hopefully, you got some good information there, talking all things Mets. We're going to continue talking Mets here and talk about things a little bit more from a fantasy perspective. And we're going to start with Mark Vientos. I told you at the beginning of the show, he is a do not draft for me. And, this is becoming like a weekly thing for me, Dave, where I am upsetting people on Twitter with some of my scorching hot takes. And my take this week that was upsetting for some was that I think Matt Chapman, who's going like 40 picks after Mark Vientos in some of these early drafts, I would take Matt Chapman over him straight up. Like, even if they had the same ADP, I would take Chapman.
Mm-hmm.
But obviously, Chapman is going a lot later. I just don't understand the Mark Vientos love. I know there is a lot of I think there's a Mets bias within the fantasy baseball community. I feel like there's just more Mets fans than any other fans, and that coupled with the fact that Vientos had a really good playoff, I feel like we're now paying a 2 to 3 round tax for him in fantasy drafts. Like, I think he should be going, 120, 130 in that like Jake Berger, Matt Chapman range. So Dave, my question to you is, how bad is this take? And how likely am I to end up on Cold Takes Exposed at the end of the season?
Okay. First, I'll tell you why you're wrong. All right.
Okay.
We'll start there. Last year, as a third baseman, he was 7th in hard hit, 7th in average EV, 7th in max EV, and he was 2nd in barrels per plate appearance. And to me, the biggest thing was he crushed fastballs last year. He was 329 against them, and he reduced his ground ball rate from 53.7 to 44.2. But the problem is, if you don't take him later on third base, it doesn't take a dive, but it's you're just betting on players to take that next step, like Westberg, Caminero, and Berger. You're betting on them making that next step. The difference is, though, with Chapman, it all depends on if you believe in his 2024 season. And I kind of do, actually. I kind of do, because power's never been an issue. He's always been reliable and durable. Since 2021, he's 18th in games played. That's pretty good. And a lot of his injuries came in the earlier part of the career. And a big thing from him was he got traded from Oakland to Toronto. He didn't pick to go there. He chose to go back home in California. He himself said that he wanted to play there and that it felt like home. So, and I think there's something to that. It's the mental and the human side of it. And honestly, like Vientos around his ADP, I kind of like getting my SP2 around that range. So overall, I would probably say it was actually a pretty good take. And I'm in Chapman, and it feels solid compared to other pieces that are around him in that area as well. I kind of like the take.
Okay. All right. So you're in on Chapman.
I'm in with you. I'm on this boat. You and I are this island, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah. So okay. So when fantasy receipts or cold takes exposed in October, they take my tweet and they repost it and they say nasty things about me. I will find a way to include you in that. I'll say Dave agreed with me, and I'll throw you under the bus with me.
It might be one of those things where we're right and wrong, because I think Vientos has the power to hit 35 home runs next year. I just don't know what else he can do with it.
Right. Well, here's the thing. He could hit 35 home runs, but what else is he really going to be giving you? Right. Yeah. Like we know he's a 0 in the speed category, at least with a guy. And I don't want to just compare him to Chapman, but the tweet did. So I just will continue that comparison. At least with Chapman, I know people are a little skeptical. You know, he stole 15 bases last year. Does he do that again? I don't know. But we know at least it's in the range of outcomes. And we know he's got the sprint speed. It's just really a matter of his willingness to do it. And the fact that he did it on a new team makes me optimistic that, he's not going to be a 0. I think I'm personally counting on like 8 to 10 stolen bases from him.
He had 7 the year before.
Yeah. So I think anything beyond like, 8 to 10 is gravy. Whereas with Vientos, that's not in the range of outcomes. I don't see. He had 0 last year, I believe. And yeah, he's just not he's not getting the 10 stolen bases. And I think we have to remember in today's environment, yeah, you could find speed anywhere, but you have to remember that when you take a 0 from one player, especially a player you're taking in the top 100, that matters. Like that stings a little bit, right? Unless you come with something so rare, whether it's, hitting 45 home runs like Pete Alonso or, batting 300 with the power like a Guerrero or Alvarez, like those guys. Yeah. Okay. I can justify obviously taking those guys with no speed, but Vientos, he's more of a, with his K rate, he's around 30% K rate. I could see him hitting 230, 240. And at that point, if you're giving me that average, even if you hit 30 home runs or 35 home runs, I don't think you're paying off that price.
And right? Chapman's going to hit around that anyways.
Right. And Chapman is that's about, I think if you looked at their expected batting average, whether you want to look at those stats or not, or just look at the K rate, they're around the same range. So I think we could expect their average to end up in the same area. So I'm out on Vientos. I think people are just really taking what they saw in the postseason and thinking like all of a sudden he's just going to take this next step and be, Austin Riley, Rafael Devers. I don't quite see that happening.
I like that Burger comp though. I
think he's very comparable to Jake Burger. 30 home runs, 240 to 250 average, good counting stats. He probably hit higher in the lineup than Burger. So I think I give Vientos a little bit of an edge, but yeah, I'm just not there. So, yeah, I'm ready to take the heat on that one at the end of the season. But let's talk about another Met we touched on during the discussion with Laura, Brandon Nimmo. So we're going to transition a little bit into injury talk now, because we know that Nimmo last year in the second half was dealing with plantar fasciitis, and we know how that could affect players no matter what sport you play. Nimmo still had, ended up with 15 stolen bases on the year last season. But I'm personally a little concerned about him continuing that, because we know he hasn't really, even though he's had the sprint speed, he hasn't really stolen many bases in the past. I just wonder, given the lingering injury that he said he's just going to kind of have to manage if, he's going to continue at that same pace that he did last year. But wanted to get your opinion, Dave. If you could just actually give us a quick update on what was most recently said about Nimmo, and what are your thoughts about him going into the season?
Yeah, well, I'm glad that Laura brought it up too, like that she feels good about him, because that's pretty good, because she talks to him and she sees him.
Mm-hmm.
It's so frustrating though, because plantar fasciitis is such a horrible injury to go through, not just for like players, but for anyone.
Mm-hmm.
But he played with it throughout a lot of the season. I think that had a lot to do with why he struggled so much last year. I believe it started in around May. And from there, you could just see his post All-Star break. He was like 190. He batted 190, and he was like almost an automatic out. This offseason, he said he's got a running progression, but he's not sprinting yet. So his plan is that he wants to maybe start sprinting by the time spring training starts. We've seen in the past with Carlos Correa how long it takes to heal, and how long it takes to just get back to the way you should be. I'm still a little bit worried, but hearing from Laura that she's not, it was good. I do like him a lot, though. I think if healthy, he can bounce back. He's usually a good source of batting average, and he made it a point to try and hit for more power last year. So if he's healthy, like we're hearing that he is, I do like him, actually.
I'm with you, man. I think Nimmo is very underrated. I mean, I think we just have to monitor. I'm a little bit cautious because of the injury.
Yeah.
But if it wasn't for that, man, I would be all in on this profile. I think last year he just got unlucky, like with his batting average and on balls in play, was just way lower than his career average. He was at 267 last year, where the 3 years prior he was, I'll give you the last 2 full years. It was 324 and 317. So I think that was just an outlier. Those years he batted 274, actually right on the dot, both years.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think people may go into the year thinking he's like a liability in average. I don't think that's the case.
No.
He's going to hit fourth in that lineup at least, if not higher. Well, definitely. I mean, maybe third, but obviously it's going to be Lindor, Soto, but those are pretty good guys to hit behind. So that the RBIs are going to be there. He walks quite a bit, so he's going to be scoring a lot of runs. Last year he went 88 runs, 90 RBIs. Like, to have that balance is I think is great. He hits the ball hard. I think he had a reputation. Like, I don't think people know that how hard he hits the ball. Like, last year, average exit velocity 91.9, 47.4% hard hit rate. Barrels, I mean, he probably could lift the ball a little bit more. He's at 9% the past 2 years. So, if he lifted, probably could turn more of those into home runs. But still, I mean, that's going to help the average. He consistently hits the ball hard, doesn't strike out a lot. He does have
great things. That's all you want from a hitter.
That's all you want, man. And you're getting him around pick 190. So I really do think he's underrated.
5 category potential.
Yeah, exactly. 5 category potential. He could be a boost. He's been a boost in average. He's been a boost in stolen bases, slightly above average in home runs, and he has really good counting stats. So at that point in the draft, like, you're getting into the point in the draft where you're looking at platoon players. You're looking at Kerry Carpenter, Parker Meadows, Cedric Mullins, like the guys going around him. A lot of them are guys that we just don't. They're not going to see full-time playing time, and Nimmo we know is. So, and he has really good skills to back it up. So I really like Nimmo. Just hoping for health from him.
Yeah.
But I want to transition to a few of your recent articles, and I gotta say, Dave, I've really enjoyed reading the pieces that you've done, the positional breakdowns where you look at the injury risk at each position, and you go through like 20 to 25 players at each position, and you give them a green light, yellow light, or red light. And that's in regards to their injury risk. And what I really like about it, you do like a paragraph on each of these players, and you point out things that I wasn't necessarily like, I forgot about, like past injuries that, maybe I just didn't even realize they had, or again, just forgot about. And it's made me think about some players in a different way. So I definitely encourage anybody listening, go check out Dave's work at Fantrax. Right now he has catcher, first base, and second base all up there. But my question to you in regards to this, or my first question is, which player that you looked into did you walk away more concerned about after doing a deeper dive on them?
Okay, so of the 3 positions that I did, I'll give you a player from each position that it was either more surprising or more concerning, or as I'm reading it, I'm like, wow, this is a lot to take in. At catcher, there weren't really many surprises, but one was really just Wilson Contreras. And I kind of knew that he was injured a lot in the past, but in his career, he's been on the IL 9 times for 8 different body parts. And to me, that was alarming. Now, I know that he's not going to be catching anymore. So some of those injuries, like last year's fracture, for instance, he got hit by a bat. Some of these things, they're not going to happen anymore now that he's at first base. But it was really surprising just to see that 9 times, 8 different body parts. And some of them were just like his right hamstring, his knee, a wrist. It was just things here and there. So for him, it was a little concerning. And I know he's going very early in drafts. So I think fantasy owners should be prepared to maybe miss some time just in case, a small ailment turns into 10 plus days.
Currently going at, I was just going to point out, currently going around pick 80 in drafts. I'm not worried, man. I'm not worried. I maybe this is, I'm a little too optimistic for him, but the fact that he's moving from out behind the plate and now is going to be full-time first baseman for the Cardinals. I really like Contreras this year because he also, to me, kind of represents the last. Actually, Cal Raleigh goes after him, so he would be the last one. But kind of, he's in that group, that tier of catchers to me that's like that. I want one of them in each draft, which is the ones that are going to play literally every day.
He's a cheat code, really.
It is a cheat code because you think about the advantage that gives you to have full-time at-bats from one of your catchers when, they're going to be teams in your league that are starting like, Ryan Jeffers and Bo Naylor, guys that just are going to be, just zeros pretty much, especially if you're in like a 12-team league. Actually, I don't know, 12-team, probably not, but you get the point. Like it's going to give you so much of an advantage in terms of counting stats, production. So I do like Contreras this year, but I am cognizant of that risk as well.
At first, I was actually surprised by Luis Arias. I marked him green, which is supposed to mean safe, but thinking about it afterwards, I actually wondered why maybe he shouldn't be. So I remembered because back in the day, I used to write about Twins prospects for Prospects 1500, and I did some digging on him tonight. Over his minor league and major league career, he has torn his ACL. He's had ankle sprains, right knee soreness, left knee. There's been so many lower body injuries that it was very surprising, and yet it wasn't, because there was always something about him. And I know he's got like that body it's not really your typical athlete's body. It's just there. And
it's just there. The body,
I don't know how to explain it.
It's just there in space. Yeah,
it is there. So yeah, I like him. I love players who hit for batting average, but it's just hard to support him as an everyday player because I feel like something's going to happen to him. And yeah, it was just surprising to see. I had forgotten actually how many times he had been injured over the years.
All right, so be cautious with Luis Arias in your drafts. We're going to talk a little bit more about Dave's recent work on injuries, but we're going to first take a quick commercial break, and we'll be back with more fantasy baseball talk. All right, we are back. So yeah, so you named two guys that really, you weren't, you walked away from that piece more concerned about, which was Wilson Contreras and Luis Arias. I wanted to name a few players that I walked away from after reading your article, and I was like, damn, I didn't know, that this was the extent of their injury history. So Luis Rengifo, you said in your piece he has 8 IL stints within the past, what was it, 3-4 years? Damn, like that has me like, I really like Rengifo for the position eligibility. I feel like he's going to play every day for the Angels, but that definitely gives me a little bit of pause, as well as Ozzy Albies, 4 fractures. Like, dude, drink your milk, man. Like, what is going on that your bones just cannot hold up?
He's been pretty unlucky, but it's just one
but at a
thing
certain
after
point,
another.
like maybe your body just can't withstand, like the everyday playing every day, especially with the Braves, because they literally play you every day.
Every day.
Maybe he just doesn't, I don't know. He just breaks down. So that took me by surprise, because I felt like Albies was a pretty safe investment, but I already have 2 shares, and I'm like, I should probably slow down a little bit with the Ozzy Albies shares this season. Brandon Lowe, I think a lot of people realize he is very injury prone, but you pointed out in your piece 7 IL stints, has only gone over 500 plate appearances once. So I like Lowe, especially at his price this year. I think that Tampa offense is going to be good. I like the switch to the minor league ballpark.
Yeah,
I think that's going to play well, but you have to have a good, if you're going to draft Brandon Lowe, I guess you could technically draft him as your middle infielder. He's going late enough, but if he's your main second baseman, make sure that you have a good backup plan in place. Ryan Mountcastle, history of 2 wrist injuries. I don't like that with hitters, man. Like, sometimes I just feel like these wrist injuries, they linger, and if someone's had like a couple of them, it just indicates to me there's something there that's not, like their body is just not meant to withstand, a full season. So that bugs me a little bit. He also had a history, you mentioned, of 2 different head injuries. So, and this isn't related to Mountcastle, but I just wanted to point this out. I was reading this article by someone we've had on the show before, Thomas Harding, who writes about the Rockies, and he had a great piece. I definitely recommend people check that out, about Jacob Stallings and how Jacob Stallings really turned around his career last year doing this visual, like this eye testing just to check his vision. And they had like all sorts of like advanced technology that they used to measure it. And the work that they did helped him to correct that issue. And he went on to have a career year. And they talked in the piece about how Jacob Stallings had a concussion 2 years ago. And it was, I don't know if this was from the doctor or, Jacob Stallings himself, but they were saying that he was never the same after that concussion. So I think we need to think about it. I mean, baseball is such like milliseconds matter, millimeters matter. So like if a concussion is affecting you in any way, we saw with Anthony Rizzo a couple years ago, and I don't think he ever recovered, right? Like he's never been the same player. We need to be a little leery of that, how these head injuries could potentially impact a player moving forward. And in some cases, years down the road. So I wanted to point that out on Mountcastle. And last one I had noted down here was Joey Bart. People are kind of in on him, as they like the second half he had last year with Pittsburgh, got kind of full-time run with them. Just keep in mind with Joey Bart, he has a history of 5 IL stints. Again, can he withstand, especially as a catcher? Is his body able to withstand a full major league season? I don't know. And the thing with Joey Bart in particular is that the Pirates have options, right? Like if he went down with an injury and Andy Rodriguez or Henry Davis, came up and played well, like I don't know if Joey Bart is coming back to a full-time role. I don't even know if he's going to be like necessarily full-time to start the season. So I haven't drafted any Joey Bart, and I probably won't for that reason. I'm just a little leery on how secure his PT is, and now adding in the injury risk, I'm probably going to stay away. Want to get my catchers earlier than that. Last question I had for you, and this is another article you had, Dave, on the Dodgers. You were saying not so fast in the Dodgers, just looking at their injury risk across their team. And you talked about Roki Sasaki. Now, so many people are talking about him. He's the hot new thing, right? Everybody there's like this mystery around him. People think he could be, I know in Japan, he was kind of seen as like the LeBron James of baseball over there, this prodigy who throws 100 miles an hour, could be one of the best pitchers, that we'll ever see. I don't know about that. But tell me what you think about Sasaki. You rated him, your worry level on a 1 to 10 scale, as a 6. So tell our listeners your reasons for concern with him.
Well, full disclosure, it was a 6 out of 10 until I read something literally the day after that it was released. And after having read that, it's actually an 8 out of 10. But first, for what I wrote, he hasn't pitched a lot of innings. So these are his innings since 2022, 129, 91, and 111. It's good, but these aren't workhorse innings at all. So in 2023, he had an oblique injury. In 2024, right arm discomfort with reduced velocity. Never a good thing. But then here's what made it go up. When he was 18 years old, so this is about 5 years ago, he had an extensive strained muscle. It led to a Tommy John surgery recommendation. He said no. He never wanted to get it. He didn't want to change anything. He wanted to, just keep on pitching. So he ended up actually being shut down because of shoulder problems that year. And then he found out that he was shut down because of that. But then he found out also that the elbow issue was that of shoulder problems. So it's been recommended to have Tommy John surgery, reduced velocity last year. He has shoulder problems, hasn't had any operation or anything to fix it. Now, I know the Dodgers are probably going to go with a 6-man rotation, so that should help it. And it may help limit Sasaki's innings, but they're going to need him to throw a career high in innings here in the States with tougher competition, with more travel. I'm worried about him, and I'm worried about the whole rotation. I'm not drafting him. His ADP, I think last I saw was in the 70s as of January-ish timeline. I'm not taking him. I don't want to know if he can even, and that's just for his health. We don't even know how he can adapt coming here to the States and throwing against major leaguers. I think it's a huge risk for anyone who wants to draft him. If you're in a dynasty league and you want to draft him, go for it. But in most of the leagues that I'm going to be in, I am not even touching him. I'll let someone else do that.
Absolutely. Just way too much unknown. I was a little bummed I missed out on him. I did an October draft, like I told you. And, you have no idea. There's so much unknown at that point. I didn't even know who Roki Sasaki was, but I remember being on the clock in round 25 or something like that. And I saw him there, and I started looking into him I really think this makes sense to take a chance on him here because I think he could. I felt like he was going to come over to the States, and I got sniped on him in that, 25th round, and I was pretty bummed about that. So I wish I had a share at that price. But because now obviously, like you said, he's going much, much earlier. But yeah, no chance, zero chance. I don't care how far he falls. Like he will not be on any of my teams, especially I play mostly 15 teamers. You really you don't want to miss on those early picks, especially those top 100 picks. Like I just have no interest in taking that risk. We also have to consider, you mentioned the travel. I know some, pitchers have come over and have been fine with it. But man, like they're not used to that level of travel, right? Japan is a small country.
Time zone, I believe, right?
What's that?
It's one time zone too, right?
Right, one time zone. So like think about going from LA to New York, and then you're going to, I don't know, Atlanta, and then going back to LA. Like that, I think people underestimate the impact that has on athletes in general. I mean, I know whenever I go anywhere and the time zone is different, I'm screwed up for days. Like I'm just like not, like jet lagged and just like don't feel 100%. Like think about trying to be a major league pitcher, and have pinpoint command when you're like not getting good sleep and you're, traveling 3,000 miles. Like that's an adjustment in and of itself. And then you add in all the injury history, the velocity that he throws with, I guess the 6-man could be seen as a good thing, but also could be a negative because you're probably not getting those 2-start weeks from him. So nah, man, just no, not even. I won't even be close. Interesting oopsie, which Jordan Rosenblum's new projection system called oopsie. I feel just ridiculous saying it. I think that was probably the point of why he named it this. But his projection, I don't know if this is an error or what, but like I'm just looking at his Sasaki projection. He's got for 103 innings, a 5.02 ERA, and a 1.38 WHIP. Holy moly!
Wow.
That would be like undraftable in like a draft and hold if you put up those numbers. So I don't know. We're gonna try to get Jordan on. I want to get him on to talk about his system and ask him specifically about that, because obviously
it's scary.
That would scare a lot of people off. So but yeah, so we'll leave it there on Sasaki. It's a no from both of us. But we're gonna move away from baseball. We're gonna move to our final segment. Hope you've enjoyed the show so far. But we're gonna be doing our mental health minute, and for anybody who's listening for the first time, this is where Dave and I, and usually we have Mike here. I forgot to mention Mike wasn't able to join us today, and we miss him, and hopefully have him back here with us next week. But this is where we talk about things that we are doing to maintain our overall physical and or mental wellness. And hopefully people can walk away with something that maybe, like, oh, maybe I should try that too, and maybe help somebody, by hearing some of the things that we're doing. So Dave, I'll kick it over to you. What have you been doing lately to take care of yourself?
I don't know if you've ever tried it, but have you ever gone for a steam?
A steam?
Steam.
No. I mean, I've done sauna. You're not talking about sauna.
It's like a hotter sauna where it's steam coming out. Okay, so at my local gym, I've been going to the steam room there, and my God, let me tell you, it's you just sit there. In a sauna, you might sweat a little bit or it's hot. This 2 minutes in, I am soaking wet from head to toe.
Really?
It is so relaxing. It is. I feel incredible after. You breathe in like the lavender, the eucalyptus, or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
I'm telling you. I don't know if it's me just getting old. This might just be the old age coming in, but
I think I mean, usually when I'm in the sauna, it's not all the time, but like it's older gentlemen, right? And a lot of times they they like to let it all hang out in there, which no judgment.
It's
there. is that the same thing in the steam room, or
it's there? Yeah. But it's hot. It's a hotter temperature, but it's like pure steam coming at you, and it's a good sweat, and you feel good afterwards. At least I do. So I'm doing that for mental health.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at it now. I googled what was the difference between that and a sauna. Yeah, so basically what you said, just similar, but
Give it a shot.
and
I'm telling you.
benefits are relaxation, stress reduction, improved circulation, detox, relief from muscle pain and stiffness, enhanced respiratory health. So yeah, good stuff, man. You go to a
Yeah.
fancy gym then if you have a steam room.
It's just a local Y. I
Oh,
don't
okay.
know.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
So
don't. We don't have maybe it's more of a Canadian thing. I don't know. I don't have any gyms with steam rooms around me, but
come on up here. I'll take you to we'll go to the
you
Y.
know, I want to get up there, man. We are planning a trip to. I know you're in a different area of Canada, but we're going up to Montreal, I think, in April.
Oh,
So,
nice.
but you're more Toronto area, right?
Yeah, I'm south of Toronto, so
Okay,
Montreal's about 6 hours away.
got it. Like
Yeah.
Niagara Falls is kind of. Are you close to that?
Yeah, I'm an hour from Niagara Falls, so like an hour from the falls in Buffalo and an
Okay.
hour Toronto north. So
Okay.
yeah,
We'll meet up one day because we went to Niagara Falls last year. Kids loved it, so
yeah,
we'll go back there sometime soon, and I'll hit you up. Definitely
perfect.
get together. But all right, man, cool. So you got the steam room. For me, doing a couple. I wasn't sure which to go with today, but I think one thing I want to mention that and more for just like I want to encourage other people to do this as well is just kind of trying to monitor my internal dialogue and pay attention to things that I'm telling myself. This is something I work with my clients on. For anybody who doesn't know, I'm a mental health counselor, and that is a lot of what we do is looking at kind of like these underlying thoughts and feelings and things that a lot of us are just we're not really aware of. A lot of us are just kind of walking around every day on autopilot, doing what we need to do. And, a lot of we're just busy and we're not really paying attention to what's going on internally. But we all have, whether you're aware of it or not, we all have some kind of internal dialogue going on. And those thoughts that we're having are impacting us at some level. They're impacting the way that we feel, they're impacting our behavior. So I've just been trying to be more conscious of when my thoughts are becoming like overly negative and just gaining awareness of that. Um, and sometimes just kind of like acknowledging it and just letting it be and not feeding into it more, because sometimes I get into that habit of like getting stuck with some of those thoughts and kind of like going down a rabbit hole of negativity.
Yeah,
So I think it's just important for all of us to just be aware of like when that's happening for us, and just being able to either switch it or just kind of like acknowledge it and just let it be, so we don't become like so attached to some of these thoughts that may be causing us to act in ways that are not congruent with the person that we want to be or our personal values. So that is my mental health minute for the week. But we are going to leave it there. So we are going to be moving to weekly. So we'll be back next week with another episode with a guest that is to be determined. I think we got to talk with Mike about who we have lined up for next week. Please follow us on Twitter at Fantasy B Beat. We'll be posting, stuff about the show, beat writer articles. So encourage you to follow us there. Also, please, we would appreciate if you enjoy the show, give us a rating and review wherever you get your podcasts. It helps us out a lot. We're also doing a giveaway. If you do leave a review, send us a DM on our Twitter account, and you will be entered into a contest to win a free month of Pitcher List Plus, to help you get ready for your fantasy draft. So, all right, that is it for Dave Funnel. For Mike Carter, get well soon, buddy. I'm Chris Torres. Thank you so much for listening to the Fantasy Baseball Beat.